everybody's here today and we want to run through some housekeeping things. Today's training will be recorded for the purpose of playback. So if any confidential information is included in the conversation, we will remove that when we publish the recording. It takes us about a week to process and then post the sessions, the recordings. The chat is enabled today for us to use. And so what we'll do is you can write questions in the chat and we'll kind of collect those, and at the end we'll kind of go through those. I will also put in the CEBH email address, which is a way to contact myself and the other staff members here at the Center for Excellence in Behavioral Health. Today's training is sponsored by the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, as part of the Center for Excellence of Behavioral Health contract. The Center for Excellence of Behavioral Health was formed in April of 2022 to provide training, technical assistance, and fidelity monitoring for entities responsible for developing and implementing evidence-based practices for individuals with serious mental illness, serious emotional disturbance, and co-occurring conditions in Iowa. And our current evidence-based practices are focused on assertive community treatment, individual placement and support, excuse me, and permanent supportive housing. Today that we're going to use the poll feature in Zoom, so please participate as you're able with that feature. It's my pleasure to introduce you today to Darcy Siebold. She's an Iowa training and fidelity reviewer, and Sarah Swanson, who's an LSW CRC. So Ms. Siebold has worked in behavioral health for over 20 years, and 8 of those being dedicated to employment services. Ms. Siebold's many years of experience and training from the nationally recognized IPS Employment Center has led her to become Iowa's IPS state trainer and fidelity reviewer. Ms. Swanson will also be joining us, Sarah Swanson, as I mentioned, and she's been a national and international trainer for the IPS Employment Center for 14 years and currently serves as the director of IPS Learning Community. Prior to that, Sarah was a state trainer for Ohio, a supported employment supervisor, and an IPS specialist. So Darcy, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Joanna. We today also may be asking you guys to do a little participation. Some of the feedback that we had received from our previous trainings was to do a little bit more interaction, which I'm all for, and I believe Sarah is all for as well. So be prepared. We don't like calling on people, but if we have to, we just might. Joanna, do you have the PowerPoint or do you need that sent to you?
And while she's pulling that up, Darcy, if you would like, I can go ahead and launch the poll so we can see who we have with us today.
Yeah, so we just want to get to know a little bit about everyone that has joined us today, what your role is with IPS, and also what your experience might be with IPS.
Yeah, but I don't know how to do.
For a couple folks who just joined, we just finished introductions and are doing a quick poll to see who is all here with us. And that should be in a separate pop-up box for everyone. Give it a couple more seconds.
So, Tori.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm unable to submit the poll, but I'm from Voc Rehab.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Looks like so far we have a pretty even mix of folks, which is great.
I'll go ahead and close the.
I don't know if they can hear me, did they? Yeah. Okay.
Close the poll. We can see. Yeah. So, like Darcy said, have quite a few folks, IPS supervisors, support employment providers, VR staff. And then we can scroll down a little bit for knowledge. So a little bit of mix too for knowledge level of IPS. Thanks, everybody.
We are awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And just FYI, if everybody could please mute unless you do have a question for one of us, do feel free to pop in and ask your questions at any time or have feedback. So as Joanna had mentioned, our training today is sponsored by Iowa Health and Human Services under the Center of Excellence for Behavioral Health contract. And we are fortunate enough to have Sarah Swanson in partnership with us today from the IPS Center. You can move to the next slide, please. And I believe you can skip to the oh, there you go. Thank you. So what we're hoping that everybody is able to gain from this training, whether you're one of those people who said you're very familiar with IPS or you're brand new to IPS, we really want you to get a good understanding of what the 8 practice principles are with the IPS model that really does drive the work of the IPS model. We also will be digging into some of the research as to how and why the IPS supported employment model is an evidence-based practice, and for you all to be able to explain that to others if you needed to. And how work supports recovery. So we'll also be digging into that, and we want you all to be able to list at least 2 ways, which we know that there are many, many more reasons why work and how work supports recovery. Next slide, thank you. So we already did that one, or that was our poll question, so we can go ahead and move on. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now.
Okay, thanks, Darcy. So the research slides that I'm going to be going through, I just want to say that even though I'm talking about them, they were developed by Gary Bond. Gary is one of the eminent researchers for IPS, or preeminent researchers for IPS, and has made a long career out of studying IPS. And to put slides like this together requires, he's really on top of all the IPS research going on around the world. So originally, IPS supported employment was studied for people who had serious mental illnesses, including people who had co-occurring mental illnesses. In fact, the first research studies were not randomized controlled trials. They compared people in day treatment programs to people who were in IPS supported employment. It all started with a project in New Hampshire to close down some of the day treatment centers and offer people help with work instead. And everyone was so nervous about that. They thought, people will end up going back to the hospital. They won't have anywhere to go during the day. And families and mental health practitioners were very, very concerned about this. But what actually happened is some people ended up going back to work. And a lot more people went back to work if they were offered supported employment than those who chose day treatment centers. And of those people who didn't go to day treatment centers or IPS supported employment, some people started going to senior centers in their area. Some people joined the gym. People did all sorts of things. And so it kind of reinforced the idea that we may not need day treatment centers, and that people can be part of their communities instead. And we'll go to the next slide. So a lot of the RCTs, which stands for randomized controlled trials, and if you don't remember from school, randomized controlled trials are the gold standard in medical research. And that means that every person is told, before they sign up to be part of the study, they're told what the study is all about. And they're also told this is a randomized controlled trial. And that means that some of the people who sign up to be in the study will get the research condition, which is IPS supported employment. And that's the condition that we are hypothesizing will help more people get back to work. And some people will receive services as usual, whatever the best local services for employment are. And whether you get IPS or the regular services is you'll be assigned randomly. It's going to be like a flip of a coin, whether you get one service or the other. So the idea is that the researchers follow people who are in IPS services and people who are in regular services at the same time to see how many people get jobs, how much they make, all those different kinds of factors related to employment. So we'll go to the next slide. So this slide is kind of a crowded slide, but it shows the rates of employment for 28 randomized controlled trials. And the black bars indicate the number of people in IPS programs who got employment. And the red bars indicate the number of people in, whatever the local services are that people thought were the best employment services. And along the left axis, you can see the percentages, what percent of people got jobs. And then along the bottom, it shows the year of the study and the location of the study. So you can see that on the first study was New Hampshire, Alabama, Illinois, Connecticut, British Columbia, Canada, Australia, Hong Kong, Canada, US, Australia, Switzerland, South Carolina, DC. The DC study has always been interesting to me because that was a study for people who had mental illness and homelessness, and they did very well. California, the next it says EUR, that's was a study that was done in 6 different European countries at the same time. Hong Kong again, US, Chicago, Quebec, Switzerland, Japan, Holland, Australia, Denmark, Switzerland, Illinois, Maryland, and the UK. The two on the far right, you'll see that IPS outperformed the regular services, but that the overall employment outcomes were lower. And in the Maryland study, they neglected, which is second to the end, they didn't ask people when they were signing them up for the study whether or not they wanted to work. They just asked, do you want to be in the study about employment? And we think that made a really big difference because people have different criteria for wanting to sign up for a study like this. For example, they're often paid for being in different interviews throughout the study, but maybe not everybody wanted to work when they joined. And it wasn't made clear that the study was for people who wanted to work. And the right-hand program in the UK definitely had problems with fidelity. We're not sure that the IPS programs were truly following the IPS approach. But in any case, they still did better. And if you go to the next slide, I think it'll give a summary. So 27 of the 28 studies showed a significant advantage for IPS. And the mean competitive employment rate in the US was 55% employment for IPS and 25% for the controls.
And Sarah, I just wanted to jump in real quick and just kind of talk about the slide that you had just shown with the graph, because it always just floors me that the years aren't chronological, and that throughout so many years, I don't know what the range of years is there, but so many places throughout so many years, and the data is just consistently showing favor for IPS. So I just wanted to throw that in there. That's very interesting.
Well, that makes you a star, Darcy, because that's what Gary Bond always says. He said, even with the medicine that most of us take, there'll be some studies that show that the medicine works and some studies that show that the medicine isn't effective. But overall, more studies show it works than not. But with IPS, it's like in every study, IPS outperforms the control condition. And I think we sort of think that's because it's so practical. It's just a really direct, practical approach to helping people with jobs and very individualized. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So I mentioned at the beginning that IPS was created for people who had serious and persistent mental illness. Debbie Becker and Bob Drake worked together in a mental health center, actually. So Bob Drake is a psychiatrist, and he was the director of this mental health agency in New Hampshire. And Debbie Becker was a practitioner there, and she was getting people jobs. And one day, the story goes, Bob went to a ski hill to pick his son up from skiing, and he saw one of his old clients zipping down the hill. And then this guy came over to talk to Bob, and Bob was just sort of like amazed. Like the guy had, his affect was so much brighter. He was talking about how much he loved skiing and other things that he was doing. And he was working and sort of saying, well, now that I have a job, I can afford to go skiing again. And the light bulb went on with Bob, like, this is really a path to recovery for people. And so that's how it all started in the mental health world. Then Bob and Debbie got together and started trying to identify what are some basic practice principles. How do you go about helping people with jobs? But since that time, IPS has been studied for people with different living situations and conditions. So the Veterans Administration has studied IPS for people with post-traumatic stress diagnosis. It's done very well there. They've also studied it for people with traumatic brain injuries and found that IPS did well. We know that it's effective for people with mental illness and substance use disorders. That was one of the early findings that surprised everyone. Everyone assumed that people with substance use disorders would do more poorly, but they didn't. They did just as well. It works for older adults. It works for young people who are experiencing a first episode of psychosis. It works well for people who've experienced homelessness, people who have a criminal justice history, people who receive disability, although few people who receive disability choose to go back to full-time employment, which is why we really want to help young people consider work before they sign up for disability benefits. And various racial and ethnic groups access IPS at a similar rate and do just as well in IPS as others, as white Americans. So, and there's even a new article that Gary is just publishing that really goes into more detail about IPS working well for people from diverse backgrounds. And I think, yeah. So some new areas of research are, there's big interest in seeing if IPS will work. Oh, here's a question. Is there any research studies about IPS? No, there's nothing on our website. Yes, the VA just concluded their study, and that's just one study. So we'll want to be watching to see if there are more studies that show the same thing. Typically, you don't hang your hat. You know how if you listen to the radio or the television, like 1 week they'll be saying oatmeal can lower your cholesterol, and then 3 months later they say oatmeal does not lower your cholesterol, and then 6 months later oatmeal can lower your cholesterol again. So you want to watch for a number of studies to see if there's consistency, and hopefully the VA is going to publish that study soon so that we can get it on our website. So there's a lot of interest in IPS for people with substance use disorders as a primary diagnosis. We were just on the phone today with some people in Norway who have done a study on that. There was a large study in the UK. And there's another study going on right now in the US called the Bees study. And we're doing some training for that study. So that will be very interesting to see how we can help those people. It's been research for people with common mental disorders, so not serious mental illness, but anxiety, depression, intellectual disabilities. There's a lot of interest in implementing IPS for people who have intellectual disabilities or autism spectrum disorder. There's been some research that shows that IPS works for people who receive temporary aid to needy families or TANF. And some of the TANF teams that I've joined will hire people who formerly received TANF to provide this service. And people with lived experience seem very good at providing the service. As I mentioned, the VA has done some studies for people with a spinal cord injury. They're about to start another study this fall, but it definitely showed that IPS was effective. They're looking at IPS for people with chronic pain. There are a few programs here and there that offer IPS for refugees from other countries, people with felony convictions who are leaving jail or prison. You might start hearing about next-gen studies from Mathematica who are looking at that, and federally qualified health centers that may or may not offer behavioral health services are sometimes offering IPS for people with mental illnesses. So a lot, IPS is really branching out. And I'll turn it over to you, Darcy.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
So, why are we focusing on employment for people with mental illness and co-occurring disorders? Work for a lot of people is part of their recovery, and a lot of clinicians believe that it is a major part of people in recovery. And, I think about all of us on this call. We are all employed, right? Think about your life without a job. I mean, what would that look like? Pretty bleak, I think. Sometimes, we might daydream about not having a job, but yeah, that would be fun for maybe a few weeks. But then, you just think about what negative things could kind of creep into your life from just not having a job. And I mean, I think about our clients that we serve, and they deserve the same thing that we all deserve. And so that's a major reason. People with mental illness want to work. So studies have shown that 2 out of 3 people, or roughly 65% of people with mental illness, want to work. And so it's not just enough to ask people if they are employed. We want to ask, are they interested in working? What can we do to help you to find a job? Those are the things that a lot of agencies can really change on their intake forms, their annual reassessment forms, so that we can get more people involved with IPS and back into their community and feeling like they are a part of it. Again, work is a normal role for adults in our society. And with this, I think about when you meet someone, what's one of the first things that you ask them typically? And anyone?
What do you do for work?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I don't know if anybody's been laid off or in between jobs, and just how kind of awkward that makes you feel when you don't really have anything to respond to that question. And it gives you a lot of pride to be able to talk about your work, especially if you are doing something that you truly enjoy, which is what IPS helps people do. It's find jobs that they enjoy, jobs that go along with their interests, their strengths, their skills and abilities. And as Sarah had kind of talked at the beginning about IPS starting as sort of that cost-effective alternative to day treatments, it really is. People aren't spending time in centers, and they are out there actually earning for themselves. Next slide, please. So we did talk about some of the benefits a little bit, but they're all on the slide here. Increased income, that can do wonders for people. It reduces poverty for a number of folks that we serve. There's so many people that have mental illness that are somehow seem to be destined to a life of poverty, and that's does not have to be. With IPS, they can begin pulling out of that poverty, begin providing for themselves, getting off of some of those social service, Medicaid, food stamps, all those other services there. It increases your self-esteem. You get coworkers and friends at your job, so your social network improves. You have a better quality of life. Your symptoms are better controlled with having a job and having all those other things that are listed above that. Working reduces hospitalizations for mental health, and it reduces substance use because you're not as stressed. You're not thinking about all of the things that you're worried about in your life and then coping with substance use. And because of all those reasons, people are needing mental health services less because they're more self-sufficient. Next slide, please. So alternatively, not working has negative effects on people. So when you lose your job, you may cope by using substances. You might develop increased physical health problems because we know, of course, that people that have mental health illnesses are more likely to also develop more physical health issues. Your self-esteem plummets. Those social contacts were there through your job, no longer there. And it causes alienation and apathy. And that's according to a study that was done in 1987. So this is where I'm going to call on you all. So I believe it's 7 volunteers to read what people say about working. You want me to call on you? Okay,
Darcy, I can read the first one.
that would be perfect. Thank you, Salama.
Awesome. When you are working, you are part of the real world. You feel connected. Having a job gives me stability. I have something to look forward to every day.
Thank you.
I can read the second one.
Thanks, Mandy.
No problem. In the past, people might have used labels to describe me, such as homeless, mentally ill, and welfare mother. Now my titles are financial administrator, college student, and working mom.
That's huge. That's so powerful to me. Okay, next slide, please. And Avery, did you say that you would read? Oh, thank you.
If I can jump in.
Yes.
I was really glad that my son's employment counselor asked me about work ideas. My son wanted me to be a part of the team, and he landed a job that I suggested.
Great. All right, we need 4 more people.
I can read the next one.
Thank you, Ken.
I worried that if my daughter got a job, she would feel stressed, but just the opposite happened. She's doing much better than before.
And that is a big concern that we see a lot of families having, right? They're concerned about their loved one. They don't want their loved one to get a job and then become more stressed and in turn experience more symptoms or a hospitalization or something like that. But we can assure them that work does do the opposite of that. Alicia, did you want to help me out?
Of course.
Thank you.
Andre is as good as any worker that I have. Automotive parts store manager.
Thank you. I'll read the next one. I count on Juanita. If she's feeling stressed, she sits in a room by herself for a while. That's okay. She gets the job done. And that's from a bakery supervisor. So kind of a different take. It's from an actual employer that employed somebody that was in an IPS program. And I'll go ahead and read the last one since you're all being a shy bunch today. The employment counselor helped me understand why Tony paces. It's okay in the security business owner. So really think about that. You know, we talk about helping people find jobs according to their strengths, their abilities, their needs. So this job where somebody paces in another job environment might seem suspicious or odd or make people uncomfortable, but it's a perfect spot for him in a security environment where he has to go and patrol, and it really does pull those strengths and needs in. Oh, we have a comment. I love the last two because it recognizes that there will still be stressors and barriers on the job, but that doesn't make somebody unemployable. Exactly, Linda. Okay. So, yeah, we were just talking about our strengths-based approach and using those strengths and abilities. And that is really what IPS does. We are not focusing on the negative aspects of a person or catering to their disabilities. You know, we really do a comprehensive career profile assessment with people to dig in and learn about what those characteristics are that make up who they are. You know, are they a people person? Are they good with their hands? Have they had previous jobs in certain roles or environments? Have they had previous training? Are they certified in any areas? What are their resources in their community, natural resources, and who are their support system? So we use all those things to figure out what a person might be good at, what a person might enjoy doing. And oh gosh, I just lost my thought, and there was something that I really wanted to say about this. Oh yeah, okay. So these things also, you want to think outside of the box. So the things that I mentioned are kind of outside, like base level things. But when you're meeting with somebody to really gauge what they might do well or what they might enjoy, think about things like, do they have a best time of day? Is it a morning person, or are they not real good at mornings? So maybe you want to find them a job that is a second shift job. Do they have medication that they take that might affect them negatively or more positively? Do they have transportation issues that you need to work around? So all those kind of things that really make up who a person is, you want to take into account with this. Okay, next slide, please. So who provides IPS services? IPS specialists, and we sometimes call them employment specialists, are people who provide all aspects of IPS services. So In some traditional supported employment models, you might have one person who is a job developer. You might have one person who is a job coach, and so on and so forth. So IPS specialists do it all, and they work directly with people from the very beginning of their referral, and they help with finding them either employment, or if somebody's interested in education, or maybe a technical training to pursue a more specialized skill. Employment specialists help with all of that. And they also work closely with a mental health team for a team approach, because people are more successful when everyone that is working with them are all on the same page, working towards the same goals. So if an employment specialist realizes that this person is struggling with anxiety on their job, then the employment specialist can go to their treatment team and talk to their therapist about it, and have the therapist work with that anxiety issue with the client, so that the employment specialist isn't left to deal with things that aren't necessarily in their area of expertise. Next slide, please. So IPS is guided by 8 practice principles, and we're going to get into these more on the next few slides. So IPS is open to anybody who says that they want to work. And again, I already mentioned this before, but it's not good enough to just say, are you working? We want to know, do they want to work, and do they want help with that? We focus on competitive employment, so sheltered workshops, job readiness assessments, things like that are not part of the IPS principle. We want to get people in jobs, because studies have shown that when you put a client who wants to work in one of those job readiness programs, they get bored and they lose interest, and they end up dropping out, and that could be looked at as a failure. But it's just that their needs aren't met. They want to work, so we're going to help them to do that. Following along with that, we also have a rapid job search principle, because we don't want to make people wait to get into a job. If they're interested in work, we want to help them work soon. We don't want to put it off. Targeted job development. So we have employment specialists that meet with employers in the community and learn about jobs, learn about the needs of the employers. They really learn about environment of the job, and maybe about jobs that aren't common knowledge. And they think about the people that they have on their caseload and try to make the match between what the clients that they have and their interests to the jobs that they learn about in the community. Client preferences guide all the decisions. So again, clients aren't pushed into any jobs that they're just because they're open, or, Walmart's hiring, so you should go apply there. If somebody doesn't want to work at Walmart, they're not going to be pushed into a Walmart job. And we have individualized follow-along supports, integration with treatment teams, and benefits counseling. Next slide. Okay, Sarah, I believe you are up.
Okay, so this is the first principle, and some people call it zero exclusion criteria. And so the idea is that people are their own best judges of when they're ready to go back to work, that it's not up to the practitioners to try to figure that out. And what do you all think about that? Does that seem a little nutty?
I think it actually is great, but I will say that I still get a lot of team members who don't agree with that, who maybe have some opinions that differ from the consumer.
Okay. Todd, what do you think?
I had to unmute here.
Sure.
No, I think if you're happy with your employment, that you're going to have a much better chance of success. And by giving people choice, it allows them much more opportunity to have happiness in your employment, with their employment.
That's right. But Steve, what about people with substance use disorders? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I guess it really doesn't matter on the disorder or disability. It's all about their choice and getting their buy-in into what they're looking for.
Yeah, right. So this can be a little intimidating at first for people. And I remember when I was an employment specialist, there was a guy named Chris, and he was always getting into trouble, or like he'd start ranting in the waiting room, and everyone else in the waiting room would get really nervous. And there was always some kerfuffle about him. And one day, and he was really a big guy too. And one day he walked up to me and he said, "Are you the job lady?" And I thought, "Oh no." And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Can you get me a job?" And I thought, "Oh no, I really don't want to," but I knew we were practicing zero exclusion. So I said yes. And Chris had a problem with drugs and alcohol, and he had ongoing psychosis. He believed that he had a lot of religious ideation, and but he wanted a job. And so I helped him get a part-time job, and I knew that money, because I was going to the mental health treatment team meetings, they told me money is going to be a problem for him. He'll spend it on drugs and alcohol. So after he started working, I knew what days he got paid, and I would always show up at his workplace right when he quit work on payday and say, do you want to go to Super K? And money did burn a hole through his pocket. So he's like, yeah, he wanted to spend some money. But what surprised me was he went right back to the children's section and started holding up these little dresses and asked me, "Which one do you think my daughter would like, this one or that one?" And prior to that, I didn't even know he had a daughter. She didn't live with him. But he really enjoyed buying her things. And while he was working, he bought her school supplies and, toys. And, we started to see this really nice side of Chris. And I remember some days he used to just pop into my office and say, "Do I really have to go to work today?" And I'd say I didn't, because he believed he was Jesus Christ. And so he thought, I saved the world. Do I really need to go wash dishes? And I didn't know what to say. So I would just say, your boss is depending on you. He's counting on you to show up. And then Chris would just sort of square his shoulders and go to work. And I think he used to pop in my office and say that because he just liked the affirmation that someone needed him, and he felt important about that. And, it's funny because it used to be that in the mental health treatment teams, when his name came up, people would always kind of like, "Oh, what's he done now?" But now people were really excited because all of us were seeing this really positive side of him. And he didn't quit using drugs and alcohol. He tried to cut back a little bit on the nights before work, but I think his relationship with everyone just improved. And, it was one of the really positive things that he was doing. It was just so nice. And in the research trials, they found that people with substance use disorders were just as likely to work as anyone else. And that really surprised a lot of people. But many people in my career, like Chris, have shown me that it's true that when people want to work, they can overcome all kinds of barriers. Some people reduce the amount of substances they use. A few people gradually eliminate substance use disorders. Having a job can give people hope that they can live a better life, and that they can be part of things and not so separate. And so I think zero exclusion criteria is really important because we want to help people who need help the most. And people with both mental illness and substance use disorders are climbing a steep slope. So that's zero exclusion criteria. And we just want to give people hope that they can work and tell people, it's your decision. Only you know when it's the right time to work, but I see that you have strengths. And when you're ready, let me know. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So as Darcy mentioned, the focus is on regular jobs in the community. And that's because what people tell us they want is regular jobs in the community. They don't want to feel segregated, which makes perfect sense. So we look for jobs that anyone can apply for. They're not set aside for people with disabilities, and they're related to the kind of work the person wants to do. Go to the next slide. And we also try to help people look for jobs soon after they enter our program. We don't do a lot of pre-vocational testing or situational jobs, job tryouts. Does anyone have a guess about why that is? Amber, what do you think? Or London, I'm sorry, you unmuted.
I was just gonna say motivation. Somebody's motivated to find a job now. If you let that time lag out, then it might diminish that motivation over time.
Exactly. You want to strike while the iron is hot. And you want to show people that you're going to follow their lead too, right? Like you're not going to be telling them what to do all the time. You're going to, if someone says they're ready to work, then you say, okay, you're ready to work, and you believe that and you move forward. And, it's okay. Sometimes jobs don't work out, but you learn more about the person as a worker. They learn more about themselves, and you go on to the next job. It's okay if someone has a job that doesn't work out. You want to have good relationships with employers, but if you maintain contact with that employer as the person is working, even when it doesn't work out, many of those employers will be willing to work with you again. Just the thing that they don't always tolerate well is feeling like you helped someone get a job there and then you disappeared. You cannot do that. But they hire people all the time who don't work out. So they won't necessarily see that as a huge problem unless you're not there to support them. We'll go on to the next slide. So targeted job development is really another way of saying that we want to build relationships with employers. When I started out as an employment specialist, I used to go to businesses and say, hi, my name is Sarah Swanson. I help people get back to work, and I'm here because I'm working with a man named Tom who lives just down the street. He'd love to work here because he has worked in a bakery before, and he's really interested in improving his bread baking skills and blah, blah, blah. And I would ask the employer to meet the person. What's wrong with that approach?
You're leaving them out of the process?
I'm leaving the employer out?
No, the potential employee.
Oh, well, right. I would have brought the person in interview.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think what was wrong with that approach, I mean, the good thing I did was I was out there in person. And if you go out there in person, you're going to get people jobs. But if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, make a point to view the employer as a customer too. So what's in it for the employer? You need to learn about that business, learn about their hiring preferences first to make sure that you're suggesting a good job match. A quick example is I went with an employment specialist to McDonald's because this woman had a problem with crack cocaine, and she was pretty irritable, but she was also very practical, and we could just see her in there making salads in the morning before the lunch rush, not dealing with customers. So we went to this McDonald's, and this woman, the manager, was kind of interested in working with us. We were asking all these questions about her restaurant, and she started getting more and more interested in working with us. And then we said, when you're interviewing people, what do you look for? And she said, I look for people who come in with a smile on their face. And my stomach just dropped, and I asked, literally? And she said, yeah. She said, when I set up the interviews, around that time, I start watching people come in, and I want to see how they interact with my staff because I'm looking for a good team player. And we thought, well, that's not Patty. But then we went to a different McDonald's, same business. And this man who owned this McDonald's was an immigrant from Greece. And he said, I'm looking for someone who's trying to get ahead in their life. You know, I came here with nothing and built myself up, and I want to help other people do that. And it was really interesting to me because, you know, they're essentially the same business, but they have really different ideas of what they're looking for in their employees. And so you want to spend time getting to know each employer and learning what's important to them. And people tend to really enjoy talking about their businesses. So you could, we talk about going once to introduce yourself and ask for a 20-minute appointment, and going back and spending 20 minutes asking about the business. You know, what's a typical day like for someone working at your front desk? And what kind of personal characteristics would make someone a good match for this job? You know, how's it been for you trying to find the right people? We're just keeping the focus on the employer. It's kind of like doing the career profile, really. And then we leave without suggesting a worker, which sets us apart from other people. And we go back and share the information with the job seeker. And if the job seeker is interested, we help them submit an application. And we go back to the employer again and say, you know what? I was thinking about your need to find really reliable people who are early morning risers. And I think I do know someone who fits that description. And you tell them a little bit about the person and try to set up an interview. And the reason this works better than what I used to do is that we're getting to know the employer needs first, the employer's needs, and they really appreciate that. Plus, we keep going back in person, so they start to feel like she's not going to disappear once I hire someone. They get the feeling that, you know, they know me, they trust me, and I'm going to keep coming back. So Darcy can provide a lot more training in that area, but that's just a little introduction to building relationships with employers. And I'll turn it back over to you, Darcy.
Thanks, Sarah. So for the sake of time, a lot of these last few preferences here, we did dig into a little bit further, but again, we focus on what the client is interested in. We don't have a pool of jobs that we are just placing people in at random, really doing comprehensive assessments to get to know what the person is interested in and what their skill level is, and also what job type, hours, schedule, transportation needs, etc. Next slide, please. And we work with people for as long as they want or need support services after so there is no date or time limit for once somebody has completed and if somebody tries a job and they end up quitting the job, they are not terminated from service. If they're still interested in looking for work, as Sarah mentioned, we look at all job experiences as a positive learning experience because people can learn, you know, what they may want differently in another job, what they definitely know they don't want in their next job. It's really based on what a person might need or want as far as their scope. So not everybody's going to require a job coach. Not everybody is going to want you to have communication with their supervisor to check in to see how things are going or to have on the job check-ins. You know, some people might want you on the outside of that and just meet you outside of their work hours. So it really is individualized and based on client preference, again, even for long-term supports. So employment specialists also help clients with changing jobs or career advancement, or if they're interested in going to school after, you know, they've had a work experience or going to additional training. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, the IPS team is integrated as an equal part of the mental health team with psychiatrists, therapists, case managers, housing specialists. Again, everybody is working together on the same goals for their mutual clients, and they have regular team meetings to discuss those clients and how they can best serve them. Next slide. One thing that a lot of people are worried about is how their benefits are affected when they get a job. A lot of people come to us and say, I can only work 15 hours because my benefits will be affected. And, you know, there's some truth, some myth, but we refer them to a certified benefits counselor that has specialized training in being able to assist clients with really understanding exactly how their individual benefits are affected with getting a job, and how much they make and work, of course, depends on how their benefits are affected. So it's not just a flat, oh, I can't work 15 hours or I can't work over, you know, and there's also work incentives that are out there for people that they may not know about where they can make more. And rules are different, of course, for Social Security versus SSI versus VA benefits. So benefits planning is a hugely important component. Next slide. Okay, back to you, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah, it looks like you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just asking, are we ending in 4 minutes?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. So instead of going into all of this, do you think people would be most interested in IPS funding or another topic? Darcy?
Saw some head nods.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to
Okay.
that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, you could probably go to the next there. Okay, so for an Iowa, our IPS program is funded by Iowa Vocational Education or by Iowa Medicaid, with some funding if clients, or if agencies are awaiting being able to bill to Voc Rehab or to Medicaid. They've also gotten assistance for the regions or for costs. So our funding model is through a milestone. I'm sorry, my dogs are, hear my dogs here in a minute. So we have a milestone payment method here. So our first stone is completed, career profile is developed, and it's a flat rate. So you can see that both Voc Rehab and Medicaid pay very similar amounts. So they really worked hard to come up with a formula where there isn't a big discrepancy in payment options between Voc Rehab or through Medicaid. And you know, there won't be any sort of competition there. It's who's going to fund. The second milestone is paid out when a client is in a job for their first day. The stone is achieved, client is in a job for 45 days, and the milestone is paid out a 90-day successful placement in a job. And again, there are supporting documentation that do need to be provided along with these milestones being achieved. So you can see those here to the right. And if anybody needs a copy of this, you can feel free to email the CEBH, which the contact information will be at the end of this presentation. And we'll be sure to get that out to you. Okay, I'm sorry.
Is that every time they
here.
get a new job?
Okay, so as far as I know, the way that worked out now, that yes, there is a milestone for each time somebody gets a job. The hope is that a client will eventually get a job that they're interested in, that they like, but we do understand that not everybody is going to stay in the first job that they get. None of us are in our first jobs or second jobs or maybe even third jobs. So as of right now, yes. Oh, my understanding is all of them can be rebuilt except outcome one. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Yeah, because your completion of a career profile will be only done once. You'll be editing it and, going in and updating and modifying a career profile throughout your time with a person, but the actual full completion of that will just happen one time. Okay, and it is 101 right now. So you all will be getting a survey at the end of this. Sorry that we weren't able to get through all of our slides, but we got through the most important parts, and we all appreciate that you were able to join us today. Our next training will be on April 20th for our Iowa Learning Community meeting from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. And we'll be talking about fidelity review process and action plan. So we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Nice to see everyone.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today.
For folks that are still on, we just put the link to our survey in the chat. If you wouldn't mind taking a second to complete that, we would truly appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.